The year is 1945. The world is taking a collective breath after the most destructive war in human history. Cities are rubble, empires have collapsed, and there's a global agreement that Nazism was, to put it mildly, a bad idea. While Allied soldiers were celebrating, however, a different group of people were busy. They were intelligence officers, and they weren't cleaning up, they were shopping. The hottest commodity on the market wasn't gold or art, but people. Specifically, the very same scientists who had just spent years trying to build weapons to annihilate them. It was the world's most morally ambiguous job fair held in the ruins of the Third Reich. The cover charge was just a willingness to forget a few things. So, what was on America's shopping list? Oh, just a few little things. For starters, the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile. It was a terrifying vengeance weapon, but to the Pentagon, it looked like the future of, well, everything. The lead designer was a charismatic, ambitious man named Wernher von Braun. Remember that name. But it wasn't just about rockets. They wanted the minds behind the Messerschmitt Me-262, the first operational jet fighter. They were interested in experts on synthetic fuels, advanced optics, and even chemical weapon specialists like Kurt Blohm, who had a real knack for weaponizing bubonic plague. He was acquitted at Nuremberg, which was convenient. The goal wasn't just to get their technology, it was to make sure the other guy didn't. And the other guy was, of course, the Soviet Union. This whole enterprise was driven by a healthy dose of paranoia. The US Army knew that if they didn't get these scientists, the Soviets would. And the Soviets were already hard at work with their own program, later called Operation Paperclip. It became a frantic scavenger hunt across a defeated nation. Picture this: American, British, and Soviet intelligence teams practically tripping over each other in bombed-out laboratories and alpine hideouts, all trying to get the smartest Nazis to sign with their team. The key that unlocked it all was the Ozenberg List, a document discovered half submerged in a toilet in Bonn. No, really. It was a list of Germany's top scientists, compiled by the regime itself. For Allied intelligence, it was like finding a pristine, indexed catalog for their morally questionable shopping spree. Suddenly, they had names, addresses, and specialties. There was one tiny little problem. President Harry Truman, in a moment of astounding reasonableness, issued an order. He stated that no one who had been a member of the Nazi Party and more than a nominal participant in its activities or an active supporter of Nazism could be recruited. This excluded, most of the people they wanted. So, the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency did what any bureaucracy does when faced with an inconvenient rule. They created paperwork to get around it. This is where the name Paperclip comes from. Security dossiers for scientists with problematic pasts, say being an SS officer, were marked with a paperclip. These files would then be revised. Biographies were laundered, affiliations were erased, and inconvenient histories vanished. The red flags were simply removed, and a new, clean file was created. Problem solved. So, armed with freshly scrubbed resumes, over 1,600 German scientists and technicians were brought to the United States between 1945 and 1959. Their first stop for many of the rocket team wasn't some high-tech lab, but Fort Bliss, Texas. Imagine going from the wooded hills of Bavaria to the middle of the Chihuahuan Desert. The culture shock must have been immense. They were kept under military supervision, living in pretty basic conditions, their families held back in Germany as a kind of insurance policy. They weren't prisoners, but they weren't free citizens either. They were given the wonderfully sterile title of War Department Special Employees. Their initial job was to reassemble their V-2 rockets and teach American engineers how they worked, all while the American public had absolutely no idea who these new neighbors were. This is where the bargain America made starts to pay off, technologically speaking. That terrifying V-2 rocket became the direct ancestor of America's entire space program. It evolved into the Redstone rocket, which put the first American in space. Then came the Jupiter and Juno rockets. Eventually, the work of von Braun's team culminated in the Saturn V, the absolute behemoth that took humanity to the moon. Wernher von Braun himself underwent a magnificent public relations transformation. The man who built missiles for a genocidal dictator became a smiling, avuncular figure on Disney television, explaining the wonders of space travel to American families. He became a national hero. It's a testament to the fact that if your work is impressive enough, people are willing to overlook some truly staggering red flags on your resume. Of course, rockets powerful enough to reach the moon are built on more than just genius. In this case, they were built on a foundation of human suffering. The V-2s weren't assembled in a shiny factory, they were built underground at Mittelwerk, a facility that used slave labor from the adjacent Dora Mittelbau concentration camp. An estimated 20,000 prisoners died there from starvation, disease, and execution. To be clear, more people died building the V-2 than were killed by it as a weapon. Arthur Rudolph, the production chief at Mittelwerk and later the project director for the Saturn V, was accused of brutalizing prisoners. Then there's Hubertus Struhold, hailed as the father of space medicine. His research was invaluable to keeping astronauts alive, but it bore a striking resemblance to hypothermia and high-altitude experiments conducted on prisoners at Dachau. These weren't just nominal party members, they were men deeply complicit in the horrors of the regime. And America welcomed them with open arms. So, what are we to make of this? Operation Paperclip undoubtedly accelerated American technological progress by decades. Without it, the space race, the development of ICBMs, and countless other advancements would have looked very different. The United States beat the Soviets to the moon. Mission accomplished. But it was a victory achieved by deliberately importing, protecting, and celebrating men who had served a monstrous ideology. It was a Faustian bargain, trading moral clarity for a technological edge in the Cold War. The operation shows how easily concepts like enemy and ally, war criminal and national hero can be redefined when national security is on the line. It proves that history isn't a clean story of good versus evil. It's a messy, uncomfortable, and deeply ironic series of calculated risks and compromises. And sometimes, to reach for the stars, a nation will happily ignore the skeletons buried right under the launch pad. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!